You're listening to episode 34 of the Confident Writer podcast with Jane Pike. Team Fabulous. It has been a little while. And let me tell you, that little while in between this podcast and the last one, which was with Kelly Wilson, wasn't intentional. I actually had a series of what you could describe as a comedy of errors. It was one of those situations where I was like, This is trying to tell me something. This is telling me that maybe I should take a break for December, which is exactly what I decided to do. However, that said, I didn't want to just disappear off the planet completely, so here I am telling you what's happened over the last couple of weeks, and also saying that as of January we will be back to our weekly format and basically taking it from the top. So I had an episode planned for a couple of weeks back now. I'm trying to think when our last episode went live. Sounds quite official, doesn't it? Went live. I think it was the end of November. And I had one planned for you the next week. But for whatever reason, I went away to a clinic with Dee. You might have been following my adventures on Facebook. But anyway, I went away to a clinic with Dee and had the episode uploaded, and then we couldn't find it when it came to editing. It just sort of disappeared. And the funny thing was, I was like, I had that feeling, you know, when you have a feeling about something, you're like, I don't know if that one's quite right. I don't know if that's exactly what I wanted to say about that topic. And when the universe took it into its own hands and was like, well, we'll just make it disappear, I was like, okay, I get the hint. Maybe that one shouldn't fly. So running with that, I was like, right, let's do another one. I had another clinic that I went to. I know, totally dedicated to the cause. Just a backstory to that, I had reached a little bit of a stuck point with Dee. You might have heard me talk about this as well, where we had so much forward going on. We were like forward for days, but not a lot of woe happening. And I just needed some guidance as to how to introduce a little bit more down to what it was that was happening. We went to work with Ben Longwell, who is from True West Horsemanship, and he used to be based on the North Island, but has moved down to the South Island. Whoop, whoop. And so he's about 7 hours away, but he's such a lovely trainer and super experienced with starting and working with young horses. So we made the trek up there in the first instance, and I worked with him over a series of 3 days, one-on-one, and got the canter going, really figured out a program for how to introduce that relaxation to a greater degree and get some more balance happening. Primarily what was happening was, especially to the right, we were out of balance, and that out of balanceness was creating a little bit of rush. It was creating a little bit of anxiety in him. And then because we didn't have too much downward thinking momentum, it was just feeling kind of yuck. So it was one of those moments where I was on the fence. I was like, I think this could just mean this, meaning that we're out of balance, but it also feels like it could mean this, meaning like we could go to a place that I don't really want to go. So it was great to have his guidance and be able to work through that. So that was where we were for that first block where my audio went missing in action. The next week I came back home, and it was a 7-hour trip, so it was quite the hike for both of us. And I saw that he was having a clinic the next weekend at his house, and that there was one place left. And I was like, you know what? We've got this momentum going. It feels kind of crazy to drive back up across the country. But I decided to do it, and we went to this 2-day clinic at his house again. Had an amazing time. The second day, I had the best ride ever, which was just, I got it on video actually, and it makes me smile every time I watch it. But a real breakthrough point, not breaking point. Well, kind of, I guess. A breakthrough point for both of us, which has really seen us get to a whole new level, which is really exciting. But this is where the drama ensues. So on the Saturday, the clinic was Friday, Saturday. On the Saturday, we were finishing up, and originally I thought, okay, I'm going to drive home on the Sunday. But Saturday night, I thought, you know what? I'll go back now. We can drive into the night. That means when I get home, I'll have all day Sunday at home with my boys, and, you know, it'll just give us a clean day to get sorted before everything kicks back off on Monday. And we were all sitting around, and it had been really hot, like it hadn't been raining. And someone came over and said, "Oh, I don't think you're going to be getting home tonight." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "The roads are closed. They've been flooded." So the thing about New Zealand, which sometimes baffles people from overseas, is that connecting the south of the South Island to the north is only a couple of main road routes. There aren't a variety of options as to how you can get from A to B. And the West Coast and Central Otago had received a huge, like completely bonkers amount of rainfall for the period. And the river systems which traverse the country had broken their banks and essentially made a mess of a lot of the major road systems and also the bridges that we have to cross over. So just as we only have a couple of roads to get, like I said, from point 1 to point 2, the river systems cut right across the country, and so we're really reliant on those bridges. I rang my husband and was like, "Have you had a lot of rain down there?" Because my little brain was bursting from the inside thinking, "But it's so hot here. We haven't had any rain. Why is it that the rivers are flooded?" And he said, no, they hadn't. It had been quite hot. But like I said, the West Coast had this huge deluge, and that had obviously fed downstream, and they had a lot of flooding, and the roads were closed. So for about 5 days, the North Island and the north of the South Island and the bottom of the South Island were completely cut in half. And Dee and I were refugees. We couldn't get home. Now, this would have been okay podcast-wise had I had all of my equipment with me, but I didn't. So I sat there musing in the paddock, being Dee's manslave for a period of days, and was like, I think that actually we are having an enforced sabbatical right now, which in some ways was kind of welcome, because I know I am not the only one that gets into this hyper-productive, I guess, hyper-busy mode, and you don't actually easily cut yourself a lot of slack. I'm not a person that easily takes downtime. It's something that I'm working on and something that I talk about a lot, because we can attach our sense of worth or our sense of value, I guess, to how much we're able to achieve or what it is we're able to do or how productive we are at any given time. And so me being on this enforced rest, on the one hand, brought up quite a lot of guilt, because I was like, I really wanted to get these episodes out. I'd planned to end the year with a bang, and now I'm like actually dropping off the edge of the radar and considering how it is I'm going to get home. So for the next few days, I was kind of glued to this particular Facebook page that was giving us council updates on the road. And then when they did finally open one of the roads, so the main route was still closed, and it could potentially still be closed now, but we went inland, and the first day that opened, the traffic was insane. It was, I think they had 15 kilometres, which is about 8 miles or so, of bumper-to-bumper standstill traffic, trying to get, obviously, through, because all of the commercial vehicles and freight vehicles had been suspended also. Basically everything was suspended. So that all had to get back into free flow. So Dee and I had a good chat and decided to hang tight for 24 hours and make it the next day. I was a little bit nervous because he is great, don't get me wrong, but we haven't done a lot of travelling together, and it's been quite warm, and I didn't really want him standing in the float or the trailer at a standstill for hours with all the busyness. But we managed to get through. We had a slower trip, so it took us about 9 hours to get home, and for a couple of hours we were pretty slow, sort of like crawling, but we were always in motion, which I was grateful for. And I kind of got myself prepped. I was like, right, if we are stuck, I've got a feed here. I can go in and give him a feed, and I had some water and all of that stuff. But he was a star. So we can tick both being temporarily homeless off our list. Not that that was something that I'd put on there, but turns out something that we've achieved together. So there you go. I feel like I should be reflective in this episode, and something that did spring to mind that I wanted to touch on briefly, given it's the time of the year where we are either swept into the cycle of all this stuff to do around the season that we're in, and then coming into January, which typically is like a time where people get really future focused and decide what it is that, we want to do with our horses, and all that's really fabulous. But sometimes the mindset behind it I find a little bit concerning. And the reason for that is that it's always focused on us needing to be different to what it is that we are now. Now, I appreciate that in and of itself can be quite confusing, because it's like, well, what's wrong with wanting to be better, or what's wrong with wanting to improve or get to the next place? And what I would say to that is nothing is wrong with that. But what is inherent to that thought process is that the need to be something different to what it is that you are now implies that you aren't enough as you are now, or that you aren't good enough as you are now. I saw a meme that was doing the rounds a couple of weeks back that said, there are 3 or 4 weeks left of this decade. What are you going to do to make it work? And what that did for me was create this sense of urgency where I went like, shit, right, okay, we've got like a couple of weeks left of the decade. Who am I? What have I done with my life? Have I made it work? Where am I with my horsing? Like, should this be the place that I'm at? How can I inject a sense of getting somewhere into this next 3 weeks so we end in a different place to what we are now? And that feeling of like, go, 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 do better, be something else came into my whole being. And I caught it in that moment because, once again, that implication was what you've done or who you are right now isn't enough, and we have to do something to fix it because we have this deadline coming into place. What I would encourage, in spite of that, and what I've been doing, both due to my situation and the decision that I've made, is just to really relax into what it is that's happening right now. And relaxing into something doesn't mean that we're not making any movements towards something else, but it does mean that we're harmonizing with the situation that we're in, with the understanding that in seeking harmony, you actually move with the flow of what it is that's presenting. And it's only when you're in that place that you can actually direct it in the way that you want to. When we are actually out of harmony with what's happening, and by out of harmony, I mean when we're fighting against who we are or what it is that's currently happening, there's a resistance there. And that resistance means that we are separate to the flow of what it is that's presenting. Now, when we're separate to the flow, we can't actually alchemize that. I don't even know if that's a word, but we can't change that or direct it or invite that to be any different because we're actually separate to what it is that's happening right now. So what I would encourage is that relaxation into what's happening, a relaxation into who it is that you are, a relaxation into what it is that's going on for you and your horse right now, with the knowledge that whether it's good, bad, ugly, or fantastic, this too shall pass. And when I come from that place, I take an exhale. And I go, you know what? Everything is exactly as it should be. It might be that there is a very short period left of this decade or of this period of time. But what if I was to actually celebrate who it is, that I am right now, who it is that I have become as a result of everything that has been happening this year, and let myself enjoy that place, regardless of whether it's the place that ultimately I would like to be. I was listening to something by Pema Chodron, who's a favourite of mine, and she was talking about some Buddhist philosophy, which mentioned, I mean, it sounds so glib, isn't it? It's probably one of their main texts, but said that wanting to be different to who it is that you already are right now, or wanting to change, is actually a form of violence towards yourself, because that implies that there is something wrong with who you are now, and that is never the case. The reason that I'm kind of hammering this home at this point is because this is the thing, right? This is the seed of everything ultimately. That feeling of not being enough, the feeling that what you've done hasn't been good enough, the feeling that you need to be better, all of that comes with a certain amount of violence towards the self. And violence is such a strong word, but I guess that's really true. There is a difference between relaxing into who it is you are now and what it is you've achieved and become and done, and treating yourself with kindness and compassion and love, as opposed to thinking, I should be this, I should be that, I need to get to that place. And the tendency is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the tendency is when we get into that mindset is that the itty bitty shitty committee really rises to the occasion and tells us how it is things should be, and even more so than that, what it is that we've done that hasn't quite hit the mark. This training with kindness, or this ability to be compassionate towards ourselves, I think, is the creme de la creme of training of any sort. If you're able to stay in the moment and stay present to what is presenting and maintain kindness, sorry, I've got a little bit of a sore throat that's got a bit scratchy right now, and maintain kindness to yourself, then what greater form of mental strength and emotional strength can there be? Really, like if you can go through the fire and stay kind to yourself, then I think you have gone to the top of the mountain when it comes to really recognizing that everything that happens is for your highest benefit, that everything that happens is the training ground you are supposed to be in right now. At the beginning of this year, I completely changed my Joyride membership program around and moved away from goal setting and towards a process that really allowed us to engage in daily practice. And the reason for that was I saw and experienced myself a lot of goal shame, a lot of goal panic, and just the feeling of separation between the person and the situation and the partnership that we had with our horse that was manifesting in the present moment, and this future focused place that we felt an urgency to get to. And as a consequence of the space between those things, we felt this looming not enoughness, you know? And so people ask, well, if I don't have goals, does that mean that I'm, directionless? Does that mean that I'm not heading towards something? And in a way, it's also semantics, so it's also restructuring how it is that we think about things. But for me, the most important element to pay attention to is the being element. So yes, we have this greater intention of where it is that we're heading, and we have places that we would like to develop our skill base towards and develop our partnership base towards. But we recognize that always our point of power is in the present moment. And I deal with what I refer to as transformables, which again, I think is just a completely made up word that totally works for me. And that transformables recognizes that all of the elements that we wish to be, quote unquote, aren't things that are outside of ourselves. They are intrinsically motivated and intrinsically activated, meaning that if we are wanting to be more confident, if we're wanting to be more peaceful, if we're wanting to be more this, that, or the other, then we actually have to practice those qualities. We have to practice courage. We have to practice confidence. We have to practice bravery. And that is the way that we extend our muscle in those directions. So reflectively, I would say for the rest of the year, how about we all just relax into what it is that's been happening and celebrate what's been happening and what is presenting right now, as the perfect place for us to begin next year from, rather than ending with this sense of angst and sense of panic and sense of kind of like not enoughness, and say, you know what? If I want 2020 to be this fabulous new decade where I begin with honouring myself and honouring my horse and stepping into this place with kindness and love and compassion, then I want to finish the previous one on that note. What better place could we start from than that? And that would be my ultimate wish for everyone out there. So, that said, Merry Christmas, everyone, if you celebrate Christmas, and happy holidays if you don't celebrate Christmas. And thank you so, so much. Like, I truly mean this. This podcast was birthed this year, 2019, and I didn't know whether it was going to happen or not. I've been completely overwhelmed by the response, and I will be forever grateful for that. So as of the first week of January, I think we'll probably skip January 1st. We might go with January 8th, thereabouts. I could have the date wrong there. But anyway, around that time, we're going to kick off with the podcasts for next year. I have a free series as well that I'm going to launch at the end of January. So stay tuned for that. But thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of Dee and Nadia and Sausage's heart. We are all incredibly grateful and appreciative and send you so much love for the holiday season and for the impending new year. And I will see you on the flip side.